Okay. So should be several options out there. Apple has some built-in stuff, and then there's some third-party things. So what did we find?
I couldn't find any third-party
There was a bunch of third parties.
I couldn't find them. I don't know if I was Googling the wrong things, but
Okay.
I thought that Apple's implementation seemed pretty simple and straightforward.
Okay. So Apple kind of has this, we think about it from an Apple Watch perspective. Apple has this specialty screen that you can present. And the screen ultimately returns a value, right? And the screen can optionally show some like suggested strings we might put in there. So for us, you know, if we want to kind of bend it towards the Dungeons and Dragons world, we can maybe say attack or you know, initiative, stuff like that. A couple of Dungeons and Dragons built-in labels, if you will. Otherwise, you dictate a word and then it captures it. It sends it up to Apple's nether sphere thing and figures out what it thinks you said and gets it pretty wrong and then brings it back. And then we put it inside of a text box and everybody.
I thought that couldn't reference with the WatchKit app.
What can't reference with a WatchKit app?
What you were just describing.
It's for WatchKit.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean that particular screen is specifically for WatchKit. Is my understanding. Anybody else find? Now there is some debate whether or not it works in the current simulator.
What's it called?
I found it doesn't. It has to be like for get the actual voice dictation. You have to use it like an Apple Watch.
Yeah. But we probably can at least get it presented. So let's look at it and see how it works in the simulator, how it doesn't. We do. Who else in here has a watch? All right, and you're running, huh?
A Moto 360.
Okay, well, an Apple Watch, and you're running iOS 9. Okay, so we might need to try to test on his device or something, or I'll have to roll back to iOS 9 on my phone. Because Xcode, or I'll run the Xcode beta. Because Xcode doesn't know about my phone OS. Let's see. Are we up here? 9.1 beta 5. Incredibly unstable. The other day it turned my alarm off and told me about it. 4 in the morning. 4 in the morning goes, I have disabled your alarm.
That's great.
It woke me up by telling me it was no longer going to wake me up.
Did it at least let you set another alarm?
Yeah, I did that. It still worked.
That's great.
Yeah, I think maybe it was playing a practical joke on me. My phone gets a little mouthy sometimes. Okay, so let's go ahead and get the code dealy flippy mabob. Let's see. Let's go WatchKit. Present. Let's see, just dictation. That'll probably take us to the right thing. Text and labels. Yep.
Are you actually going to show up?
All right, so managing text input, we got this dealie here called present text input controller with suggestions, blah, blah, blah. All right, so for starters, let's just try to get this guy doing its thing, okay, and see what it looks like in our app. So we'll go back to our app here, and on our main screen, see what does our app look like right now. Let me run this. We'll just throw a button in there somewhere to pop this guy up. All right, so it's remembering our stuff. So let's just go ahead and let's throw something above the add roll for right now. All right, I'm lost. Where's my interface? There it is. Oh, something I recognized the other day is it's actually quite difficult to use Xcode with Interface Builder if you don't have some sort of scrollable, side-scrollable mouse. You know, you either have to have a trackpad like this or the smart mouse where you can slide sideways. But a 2-button normal, like gaming mouse or something, you got to do all this drag stuff to get it to work because it's sometimes hard to grab this little window down here. It doesn't pop up if you just hover over it. At least I've found it doesn't always. So sometimes you have to like play these games where you like hide this, then drag something over here to the left, and then unhide this so you can actually get to the stuff you need. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and throw a button in here on top of that add roll just to test this. All right, and let's just call this guy Dictate. Dictate. All right, and then let's go ahead and, yeah, see, it's these situations where I want to connect it to my text here on my main screen, and with a normal mouse, you can't do that because it gets too slim. This thing isn't detectable or something. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we're going to throw in our action for that dictate button, and we'll call this guy dictate button pressed. This guy is going to be an action. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and close this and go back to our main. And let's go ahead and start off by let's just present that view controller and see what it looks like. Sound good? All right, or let's start off by trying to present it. So it's called present text input controller. So we say self.present text input controller with suggestions. Okay, so here's the guy. So let's just initially set suggestions at, let's just pass in nil initially. How come nil always tries to make this capital thing? It is nil in this language, not null, right? Okay. Allow input mode. Okay, so WK text input mode. WK text input mode dot. All right. Allow animated emoji. Probably don't want that. Yeah. This particular role is the screaming smiley face. I guess that's actually not a bad idea, but so in any case, WK text input mode lets us kind of choose which things we want to give them access to. So whether we're allowing animated emojis, allow emoji. Here's just plain. And my guess is you can probably or these guys together if you want to have multiples. So we'll see if that's the case, but I bet you could do things like that. Because those guys underneath the hood are actually numbers that ultimately produce the final value, but let's just start with this. All right, and then completion is going to be something that returns an array of any objects, it looks like. I'm sorry, no, it's going to give us as an input an array of any objects, but return nothing. So we're going to, can I just kind of let it do that? Okay, yeah, there we go. So we'll just call that guy, call it vals. And then we can throw some code in here. So let's just do a print vals for right now. Okay, so we've dealt with these before. What's this guy called right here? Go ahead. Closure. Okay, so the hope is when we click that button, it's going to go ahead and pop up our text input controller. We're trying to pass it no suggestions. It might scream about that, so we might just have to give it a couple of fake string-based suggestions or something. We'll see what it thinks of that. And then let's play around with the WK text input mode, either plain or whatever. And then right now, when we're done, when we finish that screen, it's just going to print whatever it gets passed in as a parameter. So this closure, this is like for those of you in 4.7, this is a lambda expression, right? This guy takes a single parameter. This parameter happens to be a list of any objects. Okay, it's going to be an array of what it's calling any object, so we'll see what it actually returns. And we can then do something with that, and this function is expected to return nothing. So we don't actually return anything in there. All right, so let's see what happens with this guy. See how bad it's broken in the simulator. All right, well, good news is it pops up. What's interesting there is text mode input plain.
You just shout at it to do stuff.
Dictation is not supported in the WatchKit simulator.
Oh yeah, I read that. We have to actually put it on PowerPoint to simulate it.
Well, that's what we were just talking about. But I thought it was supported on here. Okay, so let's just say that's okay for right now. So now let's go ahead and give it some options then. Well, let's keep that as nil for a second. I'm going to go ahead and create an array of options. So let's say let suggestions equal. We're going to create an array here, and this array is going to have let's say attack, comma, initiative, comma, damage. Just leave it at that. And then we'll go ahead and pass in suggestions here. All right, so we're going to pass in an array of 3 things. So now when it pops up, it should at least give us our 3 suggestions, I believe. All right, so there's our suggestions. It doesn't allow us to click this button because it's saying dictation doesn't work, but let's just assume on a regular watch this would work, that we could actually talk to it and it would interpret it. So now let's see what comes back. So we're going to go ahead and select attack. That goes away, and notice that what we got back here was an array containing attack. Now what I wonder is, why is it an array? I mean, we saw in the documentation that it would be an array, but I wonder why it would be an array. Like, what else? An array would mean a collection of stuff, right? Maybe if you're dictating, I wonder if it sends the pieces back in individual words. So if it's like a sentence, you know, hello, how are you? It's hello in bucket 0, how in bucket 1, so on and so forth. Seems plausible. So let's just say that's the case for right now. Okay.
Technically come back in binary.
Okay, but at the very least, for right now, we can fake it. We've given some options for what our dictation will show, right? So we have attack, initiative, and damage right now. The idea is if it was on a real watch, which we'll get it running on a real watch here pretty soon. I'll throw iOS 9 back on my phone. That way we don't, I mean, we could hook yours up as a development device. It wouldn't be the end of the world. I think this would be an okay distance, but then Beyonce would have to stand up and say, okay, it's running, people.
Do it.
Come on.
Totally worth it.
Okay, but we can pretend like we've dictated attack by clicking that because it comes back and we get that value. Now we need to do something with that value. Okay, so what we want to do here, now that we know how that guy works, is we want to have the last part of our, I guess, interface here. As we go through and we add a roll, we'll pick the number of sides. We'll pick the quantity of dice. Right now, when we click add roll, it takes us back. But what we want it to do now is pop up and let us choose a name for that roll. That make sense? Okay, choose a name for that roll. And then it goes back to the main screen and fills out our rows. Okay? So instead of this add row kicking it back to the beginning, we now want it to show our little dealio here. So let's go ahead. I'm just going to steal this code. And we're going to take out our dictate button pressed. Now, if I run this program right now, it's going to actually crash if I click that button up top. show that real quick, and then you can tell me why it's going to crash. Oh, when it deletes it, it updates? Interesting. It doesn't do that on the iPhone side. It's in the process of crashing. Let's go back in here. Here's that button. Here's this guy. Here's this guy. No, it's still trying to call that. It just didn't crash. Interesting. Well, in any case, we should definitely delete it. Well, disconnect it at the very least. And then we're going to go ahead and delete that button as well. All right. So now we need to go to our quantity select screen, and we need to interject something here in the add role button. So let's go ahead and call this guy select name instead of add role. Okay, so now when we hit select name, that's going to come into our quantity select screen. It's like a whole bunch of people typing in there right now, like from this class.
It's Josh Lock there talking.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
All right.
So you can yell at him.
No, that's fine. Okay, so inside of quantity select, where's our button? Here's our add role button pressed. So we probably want to rename this just for the sake of having readable code. So let's call this select name button pressed. And then we need to go back out to our interface and make sure we fix it. But it's possible it'll actually be fixed for us if the other thing was any indication. Nope. There's our select name button press, so we'll hook that up. Okay. Go back into our code, quantity, and what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to pop this on there. So now we're going to create our suggestions, present our text controller, text input controller, with our suggestions, set the input mode to plain, we get our vowels back, and then instead of printing the vowels out here, this closure happens when we're finished. All right, so whatever we do inside here is the code associated with us finishing with that present text input controller screen. So I'm going to go ahead and paste that code in there. So we're going to go ahead and let Dice Roller Core know that we have some dice, but we also need to set the name. Okay, so that means we need to go into Dice Roller Core and remember another piece of information. We're currently remembering number of sides, number of dice. Now we're going to remember cur name. Okay, we'll start off as the empty string. All right, and we want cur name to be equal to whatever string was returned by our text roll, or our text capture interface. Let's here, well, quantity select, so that comes back inside of vowels, and vowels is actually an array of any objects, right? We know that it's going to have a single value in it at bucket 0. As far as we're concerned right now, we'll have to see how it acts differently when we actually give it voice dictation. I'm guessing it'll come back as an array of the individual words we said, but we'll see. But for right now, we'll just assume it works the way we think it works. So we need to go ahead and set our name. So we'll say Dice Roller Core dot cur name is equal to, how do I get the string that is our name from vowels? Here, let me show you. We'll print. Do we still have it down here? No, we don't. Here, I'll print it out here again. Well, actually, it would have looked like this. It looked like an array of attack like this, and this guy was an any object array. So that's what it came back as. So if this is what val is, or vals is, how do we get our string attack and put it into the variable called curname? What code do I write here to extract just the string attack from this guy? Well, it's an array, right? How do we get crap from an array? Use the bucket, okay, and what bucket does this guy live at? Bucket 0. So I want to set curname equal to vals at bucket 0, but now this guy's going to boil down to what kind of animal? An optional any object, right? So this will guarantee I get a value out of it, right? But now it's still an any object. How do I convert an any object into a string? Using our as guy here and saying, trust me, it's a string. And then say, give me the string version of that. Not subscript a value of type any object. So we actually need to say that, like that. So vals exclamation point says that is an array that has a bucket 0. Give me that value as a string. So it's this guy that comes out as an optional. So that is the optional. So we're saying it actually has a value in it. So trust me, it has a value. Give me the value at bucket 0, which comes out as an any object, and then convert that to a string. Trust me, it's a string. Okay, so we'll set curname. Then we'll set our dice equal to whatever our dice is equal to. And then we'll go ahead and we'll pop to the root view controller. That's going to take us back here to our main screen. Inside will activate. Will activate asks, do we have some dice? We do. But now we have a third piece of information. And it just so happens that our current rows don't support 2 pieces of information, or 3 pieces of information. They support 2 pieces of information. Right? We go back in here. Oh, we need to go here. Then here. Actually, let's go into our row first. Roll row. Is that what it is, or is it dice row? Dice row, okay, no, it's roll row, this guy. Right now he has a size label and a quantity label. We want to also give him a name label. So we're going to have a third piece of information for our row label, or roll label. So we'll have a name label as an outlet. Now we need to go hook that up to something, which is going to require us to redesign our row a little bit. So let's go into our interface. So that's this guy right here, right? So right now we have a quantity that's hooked up to that outlet. We have a number of sides that hooked up to that outlet. Now we need to somehow squeeze a name on here. So let's go ahead, and that is this guy right here. So we currently have a group that's set up to be horizontal, right? Yep, that's a horizontal layout group. So we probably, in the top level, is that that's not a group. Okay, so let's throw another group on here. All right. So we're going to say this internal group is horizontal, but the external group is vertical. Then we need these guys, and why can't it go inside of our group? There we go. There we go. All right. So now that's that group. So now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a well, it doesn't have to be a group, just a label, right? So we'll go ahead and add a label under this guy. And we're going to go ahead and make that label have a width relative to the container. We're also going to center it. And this guy is going to currently say the name. Okay, so that's what this guy will currently look like. So our rows look a little more complex than they were before. Do we want it centered? Oh, we can decide later. All right, we'll keep it centered for right now. Then we need to go ahead and we need to, since this guy is a cell, we need to go to his outlets. And now we have our name label outlet that we created. We need to drag that in to our name. So now we've hooked that guy up. So now the interface supports our row that has 3 pieces of information on it now instead of 2. All right. So now we need to, when we're adding a new role, we need to make sure we actually set the name. Okay. So we'll go back to our main screen. So if we have a role, we're going to go ahead and append that new role, which has a quantity and a number of sides. Well, wait a minute. Now I need to expand my role object. This guy. This guy no longer just has a number of sides and a quantity. He also now has a name. Var name is a string, which means the constructor for this guy must also take in a name as a string. And we'll set self.name equal to name. All right, then we also have a version of this guy who's able to be built from a role string. So now we need to update that. Okay, so now our role string is going to have 3 pieces. So let's say this guy is self.name is equal to the string version. It probably will come out as a string. Parts at bucket 2. Doesn't look like we had to change it. Okay, so this will set the name equal to whatever's in that bucket. Now we go back out to our main screen. So now when we build in our roles, we're passing in dice roller, num dice for number of dice, num size is from dice roller. Now we also need to give it a name. And the name is going to be dice roller core dot name. All right, so now we're building our role object correctly. Now we call dice roller core dot reset values. Well, we're not fully resetting the values now, so we got to go up to dice roller core. Reset values needs to also set the name, name equal to the empty string, to get that back to its initial value. Go back in the main screen. So now, for the dice strings, we're going to create an empty array called dice strings. We're going to go through all of our current roles. And we're going to append onto the dice strings each of our roles .toString, which will give me the name as well. So now it'll be, quantity, number of sides, name, in this case. So now we're storing that because we actually store inside of our NS user defaults an array of strings, because that's storable, as opposed to an array of roles, which is not, because roles aren't something that Apple knew about, so it didn't teach NS user defaults how to handle something that was invented by us. All right, but it knew about strings, so we're storing an array of strings and preferences. Okay? And then we call generate table. Now, if we run this program right now, we currently have some incompatible issues. NS user defaults is remembering an array of strings that does not have a bucket 3. Or I guess a bucket 2, does not have a third bucket in it. It has, when we split it, our array of strings currently is quantity, colon, number of sides, colon, well, right now it's just that. Quantity, colon, number of sides. Our new versions of our roles now have quantity, colon, number of sides, colon, name. So when we read it in right now, we're going to be trying to extract that third value, which means when we try to create our instance of role, this guy right here, it's going to be taking in that role string, splitting it on the colon, and trying to yank 3 pieces of information out of it. From this point forward, anytime we create a new role, those 3 pieces of information will be there. But right now, we have an old version of NS user defaults that have old versions of our roles in it, and all of those roles are broken, right? They don't have all the information. Right, so if we run it right now, it should crash. I don't think it'll default to the empty string. It is going to do one of those 2 things. Okay, yeah, it crashes right there. I tried to grab part at bucket 2, did not find it. There was not 3 elements there. Okay, so how do we fix this? We think our program is better. We've added some additional features to it. But now we're stuck in a world where NS user defaults is remembering some bad stuff. How would you fix this if you were me? We have 2 options, and we've already seen one of those options in here.
Clear out NS user defaults.
So who?
Clear out.
Okay, so we need to somehow clear out NS user defaults. How do we do that?
File. Clear out.
File right here. Just made up a file option.
Yep.
Think you were talking about the simulator over here?
Yeah, sure.
Reset contents and settings. Okay, so that guy will do it, right? That basically just deletes anything your phone currently remembers. But now wait a minute. We just released an update to our application. It's on the App Store. Our poor unsuspecting user just downloaded the app on our watch, and we didn't tell them to first delete the application and then reinstall it, which effectively will delete the user defaults associated with it. So while we can do this fine for our little testing environment here, what if we need this to work for our future?
Do a try catch block. And just say if. And then
Okay, so we have to handle it programmatically. So we need to have like a migration block, right? So we'll have something in our code here. And let's just go ahead and do it in little pieces. So we'll go to our main screen. And let's go ahead, we'll do it in will activate since we're messing with this stuff in here anyways. Let's see right there. Will activate.
Feels like array is kind of a naughty way to go about saving that stuff.
Well, why?
Could you save lists to default?
Well, what's the difference between a list and an array?
You can kind of iterate through it. Well, I guess you could do it for.
We're iterating through an array.
Yeah. I don't know. It just feels like you're more prone to out of bounds index issues with an array.
Well, I suppose, but you know how many elements are in it. Count number of elements.
Yeah.
I mean, I think
Why can't you just serialize a goddamn class and JSON
You can.
and save it?
You can,
I
but
know, but
we'd
why
have to
can't
modify
we?
our class. So we can either modify the class and make it work that way, or we have a perfectly acceptable class called string that already has that.
Yeah.
And then all we have to do is modify our class here and just say, hey, we're going to give ourselves a second constructor that knows how to build this guy out of a string. I think it's a pretty clean way of handling it. So we can go through the one-time thing of teaching NS user defaults how to hold one of these guys by adding several methods to it that teach it how to represent itself, how to serialize and marshal that data. Or we can just say, I know how to build myself out of a string. And I trust that NS user defaults can do strings.
Create parts to be a 3-length array and then you input the strings from the split string. So you have essentially buckets that are empty.
Well, possibly, but I mean, I think you're overcomplicating the issue here.
No, that'll be a lot simpler than.
Which part?
You just create parts to be an array with 3 buckets, and then you just fill the buckets with as much stuff as you have, and then you have the empty bucket that you can just kind of use. Because
Well, that's
the
fine.
index out of
So we could do something like this. Just in here, we can ask the question: if parts.count is
well,
equal to 3, do this.
yeah, that's
Else, self.name is equal to n/a or something like that. So we can do it in the constructor part of it,
yeah.
which is where it was breaking. So now when we run this, now we get the, well, we never actually set the name, but it doesn't crash anymore. Okay, so we need to actually set that name variable. Okay, but it doesn't crash now because now it should have a bunch of n/a's. So if we go back here and go into main screen, right, that's our role object. Then we call generate table, and this is where it's at in generate table. So here in generate table, say curro dot name label dot set text equal to dice roller core dot the rolls at bucket I dot name. So now we'll grab that third piece of information. So now we should have a bunch of NAs for its name. And we might choose to say maybe this. Make it a little more descriptive. So now this guy will just say name next to it. So now when we go and add a roll now, and we say D6, and we say 9, and then we say this is for initiative, we come back here, and now we have a new roll here whose name is initiative. Make reasonable sense? So we could do it that way.
In the set name, can we do inline if statements so that if roles is equal to NA, we can display something else?
The set name.
So if the roles at name is NA, we set it to something else?
Like what?
I don't know. Something else?
Well, we could set it to the, we don't need to, we could do an inline
Yeah,
if
well,
statement, but if you wanted to set
I
it
mean,
to something
if
else,
it was essentially what I was thinking is,
tell me what your something else is.
well, you just leave the bucket empty. So you just leave it as a blank, and then in the display, then you actually set it as NA. So you leave it as blank there, and if the string is blank, then you display NA.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just-
I mean, you could change it to whatever you want it to be right here.
If we could do inline if
You
statements
can.
in.
Yeah, inline if statements are supported.
Yeah, I don't really care about
Yeah.
how we're displaying it. It's just,
But now we have an issue now. So I'm going to actually run this again. All right, so now we've kind of thrown a little catch in there. So we could have, on one hand, I think the initial approach Dover was going for is maybe we grab the current user of NS user defaults, the current version of that, and upgrade it. Go through and replace each string with an extra empty string at the end. So with an extra colon, nothing, so we get a blank for the last thing. Remember, we do colon n/a or something. So basically fix it so that next time it doesn't have to be fixed. And a lot of times what you do for, if you're going to do a migration like that, is instead of fixing it every time, what you do is you fix it once, and then you set another value inside of NS user defaults that asks whether it has been fixed or needs to be fixed, something like that. So you do a single migration, Very first time somebody downloads your updated app and installs it, it goes through and it asks the question, is there a needs fixed variable there, or is fixed variable there? There's not. So I'm going to go ahead and fix everything, tacking on a non-existent name. Then I'm going to save it back there and add that other variable. So in future releases, future updates, I won't tack on extra colon whatevers. What we've done here is every single time through when we're building our instances of role using this constructor, we've just asked, is there a third part? If there is, use it. If there's not, default to n/a. Make sense? All right. And remember, from this point forward, though, every single one of these guys will have a third option. Because we've actually saved it back into NSUser defaults, because down here in our toString, they'll never have a third option. Inside of our toString, we need to give it that third option. And this is going to be name. So that's actually interesting. I ran the program again, right? Which means that this last guy no longer has initiative in it because of that. My toString didn't save that. It didn't write out the initiative thing. So when it came back in, it only had two things. But now if I run it, now he knows how to store those things permanently. Go ahead and add a roll, D20, 22 of those. This is damage. There's our damage guy right there. We'll run this again, and damage will still be there. Okay, so now, next question. What do we do in the event that we have some NA? So Evan just downloaded the updated version of this. He's getting ready to go play Dungeons & Dragons with his buddies. He has all of these roles that he's already programmed in here to do stuff. All right? And he knows what they are in his head, but he wants to update so it doesn't say NA for all these things. He wants to be able to change the value of that.
He obviously has to open the text editor, go into the settings file, and update it.
How would we use this interface to do that? Because right now the idea is that when I click here, it rolls, correct? But I haven't written that part in mine. That's relatively trivial. That was 4 assignments ago or something like that. Make it roll. All right, so when I click this, it rolls. But I need to be able to change this. How do I do that?
Long press. And then you can bring up a delete or change.
Oh, so use one of the other. Instead of click there, click and hold. And that gives us the a different event. All right, so let's look at that. Here's my example stuff. So let's go to our table example. All right, so we have the did select row at index.
Is there also an option to swipe at the button and have it like pop something else in front of it?
Yeah, there might be. Let's look. So we'll go here. Let's override. We'll override right here. Func table. Okay, so this is the only one that gets called. So this is going to allow us to respond to clicks. How do we respond to long presses or other events? Let me try something here. Actually, we could probably do it with this. that's menu taps. Handling row selection. Just did select. Row. We're not going to be able to do a button on there, are we? Well, we can put one on there, but the button's not going to get clicked before the...
Well, here it is. Supposedly that tries to run you through it.
Okay. So, what we need to figure out for next time then is how do we update this interface? I don't want you to do it, just like we did for today. Suggest how we do it. How do we update this interface to allow us to edit this name? So that could be either a long click on this thing instead of a short click, which I think would be cool, but it doesn't seem like that's built-in possible. So we need some sort of suggestion based on this current interface that if I see an n/a here, that I'm able to do something, whether there's an edit button up here that takes us to an edit mode for these or whatever. I mean, I think that would be easy to do, but maybe kind of quirky. So some sort of other event we can associate with this or change the way these work in order to be able to edit those names. All right, so think about it, do a little research, make a suggestion. So it should be a free homework assignment. All right, I will see everybody on Friday.